Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. I'm Sam Torres, joined by our other host, Tori Gray, and today we're going to have a really fun conversation about the relationship of content and paid promotion. So we are joined today by Toshi Jones and Ben Dankyu. That's right. Thank you. Okay. So would love, Toshi, if you can just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Toshi Jones. My husband and I run a boutique agency out of Atlanta focusing on brand strategy, content, and design asset work. So this is right up our alley.
Awesome. And Ben, how about from you?
Hi, Ben Dankyu here. I'm the CEO and founder of an agency called Nav43. We kind of focus on SEO and PPC, a little bit of a split focus. So I have kind of two-way vision across these two areas. And yeah, we've been around since 2016. My business partner and I started this together, and looking forward to this crazy landscape of search and to talk about this conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Ben is near me here in Canada, near Toronto, Hamilton. So fun to have neighbors all around.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, y'all, for joining us. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. So let's just dig in. When does paid distribution for your strategic content actually make sense?
For us and for our clients, I look at paid distribution as an accelerant. We don't do PPC and we don't do a lot of search, but we do a lot of content. And when a client doesn't have a content ecosystem in place, paid distribution across all channels can expose some valuable ways to distribute content that are outside of the slow and steady model. So we often look to paid distribution when a client really needs to promote a product or a vertical, but doesn't have the ecosystem built. Say they don't have enough content to provide significant ranking, or the client is behind on their content calendar and they just don't have their campaign strategy ready and executable, then we'll look to paid for that. When they have something great, we try to latch onto that and use what they have. So say they have an excellent webinar with a SME who really knows their stuff, then we'll put together an effective pre-launch campaign and something like a teaser for LinkedIn or Instagram, and we can get the ball rolling without having the full ecosystem built.
Makes sense.
I love what you said on the ecosystem. That's so important for us. Like, we'll come across businesses and like where they are in like their funding, their marketing structure. Like, it really does depend. For paid promotion for us, like you said, if they don't have enough content yet, and like say for example they're like starting ground zero with like an audit and they have like 10 pages, and it's like, hey, yeah, we can definitely build up a keyword map and do all that stuff and go the SEO route. But in the meantime, like, do you have goals? Like, are you trying to test with customers? Are you trying to, are you early to market? Like, is your product just launching and you need to see how it's actually working in people's hands like this week? Like, there's a lot of things that come into play about like where they are in their own journey of growing their company. And like, I find that often maps like to your point on the ecosystem of like the size of the company. Like, a lot of times I'll get like a small business and it's like, listen, like, do you have $60,000 to spend on something that's going to grow your brand long term right now in terms of SEO? Or do you want to start small? Let's figure out what's working for you and kind of go that route and then invest into areas we know. So whereas I come into an enterprise company, it's like, listen, we have all these webinars, we have all these, we just want you to like, paid promotion is a tactic for you to like come in and optimize what we kind of already have. So it definitely, like you said, depends on the ecosystem, depends on the business like goals and time cycle, like where they are in their life cycle. But oftentimes I find myself having to, ask someone like, are you looking to invest in this? Sometimes we'll have someone come to us with like, I want to invest in SEO, and I find it tricky to like, hey, well, you should do paid. It's like, what are you looking to do, and how do you want to grow your company, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, because also I think there's definitely times for SEO we've done paid promotion of content to try to really just, and Toshi, I love the word you use, to accelerate understanding, is this meshing with the right audience? Because I will say the targeting tools within paid promotion is just really quite phenomenal. And then you get a lot more data back on the paid side than the organic. Now, of course, that's getting less and less all the time. Thanks, Googs. We'll talk about that another time. But I think sometimes the learnings that you can get from that can really help to influence your organic and your overall content and brand strategy, because you can just, instead of having to wait 60 days to see what's the reception, maybe you only need like 5 days, just depending on how much money you put behind it and your targeting and all that good stuff.
On that point about when, I know this lovely group of SEO people here are looking for signals on their content, like is paid promotional content going to give signals that help you rank? And you can debate about, of course, what Google says and what people see there. Yeah. So that's one thing, but I do find one thing that it's not so much about whether it's a rank signal, it's if you are using paid promotion with content that is looking to rank in that kind of lead up phase. If your paid promotion is promoting strong, helpful content, which hopefully you're building to rank, it getting shared and it getting naturally like expanded across different channels is going to help it. Like it's not about whether you're sending that paid traffic. That initial paid traffic might not give it that rank boost, but if it's actually helpful content and you're promoting it and users are sharing it, engaging on it, going throughout your website, converting, there's, in my opinion, a very strong tie towards like just that overall kind of like growth across the two channels.
I agree.
Love that. Love that. I'd love to hear more about when in the life cycle of, any individual piece of content you guys are using these sorts of paid distribution tactics.
We're using them all the time, but we change our strategy depending on where the client is in the life cycle. So a lot of the work that we do is brand work. So for a client who is coming to us and has something of a brand strategy in place, we can take their existing strategy and start to model off of their voice, their tone, what they want to say, if they already know what they want to say. We tend to use paid distribution in different ways at different times in the life cycle. In the beginning, if we can get their brand strategy done right away, then we'll come in, and if it's, let's say, B2B, we'll hit it hard on LinkedIn. LinkedIn and Instagram do really, really well for us. No matter if it's B2C or B2B. We find that we can get great targeted content out to the right people at the right time. We're actually pulling away from making Facebook ads and Facebook campaigns more and more. The space just seems to be really muddy, and we're not getting the kind of results that clients, they really want, that like the high value in KPIs, and they're just not getting it there. So we're actually looking to TikTok, Reels, and Instagram stories, and we're bundling all of those together. And the play is really interesting for B2B. It's harder, but we can execute that anytime in the life cycle. Whereas we previously used to have to sort of have things built up a little bit more. Instagram Reels and stories are a little bit more loose, a little bit more fun, and we can get them executed pretty quickly.
Interesting.
I have like two different points on kind of timelines. One of them would be like seasonality. So we have some clients where so search volume goes up, and say we're actually ranking. Usually it's like either top 5 or top 3, and we're already ranking in the SEO front. So this is for a mature campaign client. There's some clients I have like peak periods where they'll do 80% of their business in like a 3-month, 4-month period. I think about any sort of e-commerce that might be like, up until Christmas time, or potentially gardening. And I'm just kind of giving examples, but we'll actually use that seasonal time. So one, if we have content ranking, can we use paid promotion to get even more leads during that high business time, as long as their sales team can scale to it?
Yep.
Or two, if we don't have content, like say, for example, we thought of something like 3 months before it got late into our content calendar, and we just posted like the month before that this seasonal time will happen, then we are like, okay, well, this isn't going to rank for this year and great for next year, but this year it's not going to be there yet in time. Let's boost it. Let's push it just to see like, hey, we're already invested in this content. We put this money into it. Like, let's see what kind of happens. So that's like seasonality is huge for us. And the other point on time would just be depending on their budgets. upfront starting off on the campaigns. Like
Mhm.
a lot of times they'll come to us and be like, hey, like, what should we do first? And it's like, hey, what's your budget? And if you're funded and you have you have already a monetization path, like we know that if we get this client in the door, they're going to buy and we're going to make money. Not we're still kind of guessing and testing. With those clients, it's like, well, let's do it. Let's start your SEO journey. But during that time, right up front, let's already start. Like once we get some content live in that first like 2-3 months,
Mhm.
let's start pushing some campaigns then. But that totally depends on like what their like how mature is their marketing program and their budget.
Interesting. So accelerating at the launch of an individual piece in order to like help it boost. And then if they have an ongoing budget, keeping up with that to make sure it stays out there. But okay, that absolutely makes sense. I'd love to question you more about the seasonality piece, because that's super interesting. What kinds of pieces is that? Is that like, I don't know, like buying guides that you're advertising like the months before and then leading up to Christmas, right? To help them plan? Or what does that look like?
No, that's a great question. So that is a great hook piece right there. The ones I've had experience with like firsthand. So I've seen like a lot of case studies of that kind of stuff happening. So I can't speak to it directly, but I think that's a great one. Ones we've used and have tried. I'll just use one of our travel clients that we do is like helping them kind of. It's like soft, kind of mid to top funnel style conversions where you're just trying to look for an email and you're just trying to look for interest in this peak time when we know people are looking. Like we're not going to sell someone on a $15,000 expedition, just through this, but we're trying to get them into it. So, or same thing for peak times of a B2B. It's like could be a webinar, a free piece of content, something helpful. But kind of back to that travel one, like you mentioned, a buyer's guide would be a good one. We've used like these quizzes and like so we actually have a piece of content that we're ranking. So it's not just the quiz, but built in that content, like a high into it is a quiz that takes you into like a conversion, like kind of out of that piece of content. So we're ranking like, hey, how to explore this country, or, ever thought about visiting X, or something that like is interest capturing. And it still has a keyword in there for like visiting X. So it kind of bridges that like SEO. And then for paid, we're saying, hey, like, have you been there before? We're asking them questions, little quizzes, but really trying to like, do you want to see polar bears? Do you want to like fun things that were like,
yes, I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the answer is absolutely
just not up close, but like up close, but
from a
protected. Yeah,
absolutely. Tosha, you mentioned this a little, but what paid channels are you experimenting with, and what's working and not, as well as like what sorts of campaigns or individual pieces of content do or don't work? What about like keyword targeting? I get the piece on LinkedIn where you're more persona targeting, and in Instagram you're kind of doing a similar demographics and stuff like that. But in the paid search world, I'm also curious, are there keywords you do and don't go after? How does that work? Channels, content, keywords? Tell me more. What's working and what's not?
Well, a lot of the content we do is long form. So we do a ton of B2B, and that for us means at its core, most successful content ladders up from thoughtful brand strategy. So we always really try to focus on brand and then move from there. Knowing who you are and what you want to say is really important. So a lot of times when clients come to us, they don't know what to say. So we really focus on, getting their voice down, getting their tone down, and then targeting that to their audience. It's not to say that you can't be successful if you haven't executed a brand strategy yet, but you'll have a much easier time getting to your goals if you've taken the time to figure out what your audience wants and then define exactly how you'll give it to them. So the values at the heart of the explorations and having solid differentiators, and the why us. And if you take especially those things and you take them to LinkedIn, if you're B2B, that is like an easy sell. So
that's so important. It sounds like we often like get challenged with that a lot, where they want us to like get leads. Here's our performance goals and that, but we don't actually have that same offering where you like that brand story side. So do you have like people come to you who are like really kind of further down, like we want leads and sales, and you kind of make them step back and you're like, hey, first we need to figure this out?
Yeah, totally. And it's a lot of companies have done their brand strategy way back. And so they'll hand it to us. And then a lot of their stakeholders will tell us that's, we're hearing from the stakeholders and that's not quite what we do anymore. So, and then if we hear enough of that, we kind of sit down and say, hey, it might be time to rethink and realign your brand strategy to how you guys are operating today, to the current market, to your current goals. And usually clients are really excited to hear a new voice and a new targeting, especially since we work a lot in tech and tech changes every single day. And so we're always on our toes. And we work with a lot of companies that are in flux. And so when you're in flux, it's crucial to have your brand realignment, to know what your pillars are, what your core offerings are. And we take that information right over to the advertising campaign. So we'll create campaigns that are right off of your core company pillars and run those to your target audiences. We'll do all the audience targeting. That's one thing that I think a lot of companies don't have. And if you're B2B and you're going to LinkedIn, more of our clients are experimenting with B2B on Instagram, and Instagram's targeting is excellent. It's that you have to have the right message and the right pacing, because Instagram requires this sort of excited and involved pacing where LinkedIn does not. Like, you can get audience with slow and steady and easy and sort of chill on LinkedIn, whereas Instagram wants excitement. So you have to adjust your tone. But I think for a lot of organizations, they're not thinking that they can be in those spaces like TikTok or YouTube stories. So we're adjusting there, and we're seeing some good success, but it really takes patience on the client side, because I think they want to be just as exciting as the young, hip thing that kids are drop shipping on Instagram or on TikTok, and they're not going to be that. So as long as they understand that they're not going to be that, then we can get them in there and get them to their target audiences, because just like teenagers, executives are also scrolling through TikTok all day long. So.
Oh yeah, I had to take TikTok off my phone because I would realize I was like, and 45 minutes just passed. Okay, I'm no longer doing this. So I have a device that is just TikTok for work, and that's it. How are you adapting from, like, I think you said you normally do long form content. So how is that translating into actually creating video, and what are some of the strategies or the techniques you're using to really get into that, like the YouTube Reels and Instagram stories and TikTok?
So we take a client, we do a pretty thorough brand exploration if the client will give us the opportunity to. And we do tons of workshops. We get the client involved in the process. And once we nail down voice and tone, we take that voice and tone into core messaging, and the core messaging carries right over into every single asset that we work on. So we do a lot of takeaway assets for clients. We do white papers, sell sheets, infographics, those sorts of things. Are the owned content is great for LinkedIn. When we start doing videos, those can actually, one 30-second video can turn into 4 or 5 assets if you'll allow it. You can take it down to 5-second pieces and 15-second pieces for YouTube and for TikTok and stories and reels. If you go into creating the content with the mindset that you can, when you create your scripts, you can write this first 5 seconds is multi-versioned and it can go in these 3 places. And then this big chunk of meaty content in the middle is what we'll use for, say, the opening of a webinar or the closing of another piece of owned content, maybe a video on the homepage that describes a particular piece of product. So it really comes down to planning ahead of time and knowing that you're going to need lots of content, and then having your writers execute on that and making sure that that content ripples out and distributes throughout.
I've definitely found some across the different channels. Like right now, there's a lot of change in the air, of course, moving to cookieless future. first, like, data privacy concerns, GDPR with the EU, Apple's protection of data, all these different things. Some of them are in place, some of them are coming. But kind of the result of that right now is I see this value, and we see this value in that first party data. So a lot of we've had some great successes in terms of like a specific tactic is using that first party data, mapping it to some of those audiences and building out those. And we've seen some big lifts. Like a lot of times it'll convert at like a 20% higher than some of our other best campaigns, and at scale that makes a big difference. So definitely like it's worth your weight in gold to have that first party data these days. So that's kind of where like we're seeing a little bit of the crossover of like, even if we're ranking that content from an SEO perspective, getting that traffic, I know there's a lot of problems with cookies and third party, but first party data and that traffic, leveraging that as much as possible. So like Toshi, what you kind of mentioned in terms of like mapping their, like in that early exercise, it's exactly that. But like in this, I'm sure you did this in the second phase, like, hey, now we have that initial mapping. What are we seeing, and can we evolve some of those audiences? So kind of those two different phases: one, mapping target like audiences, and two, saying like, what is our first party data we can leverage? Mm-hmm. And we'll typically have like prospecting campaigns, like I mentioned before with Toshi, either on Instagram is same thing. We've actually been pulling away from Facebook a lot too, just seeing better results on Instagram. And then
that's interesting that they're the same owner. Is it like different pricing, or is there like audience mismatch, or what do we think is the difference there between Instagram?
For us, it's audience. I think I would just like, the best way for me to describe it is muddy. It's like there are a lot of people on Facebook, and they're all there to do a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And it feels like the algorithms are designed in such different ways that we can't get the kind of attention and focus that we can get on Instagram. And I think it might have to do with, number one, like size of screen and viewing, like just the viewing experience. The viewing experience is really sleek in Instagram, especially in Instagram stories. And so what effectively would be a 5-second piece, you can break it into, 3 parts or whatever they have to, click through. But you can really get people engaged using that medium. And we're just finding that whatever it is about Facebook, whether it's the shape of the ads or just the presentation of them, they're not as sticky. It's really what it feels like to me.
That's a great insight. Like it is really around the audience and the format. Like I find there's so many different use cases for Facebook, like how people leverage it. And I know specific like Facebook, gurus or marketers who get great results, but usually it's when they have this like super targeted audience that they know they're going after within the platform. But to your point, like when we want to actually like explore some of our clients that we have, it makes more sense to be on Instagram just because of that. Really, it's this experience. We can give them this content and this targeting audience, and it is much more like streamlined for how it's just cleaner, like you mentioned. So, I mean, it's hard to blanket an overall statement, but I agree with that. It's very audience dependent for us.
Yeah, I would say I think the having the full screen takeover in Instagram has got to be meaningful. Plus, and maybe it's just the age group that I'm in, but I feel like more and more my age group, we were the first adopters of Facebook. And so we used to be the power users, and yet across the board, like we're all like, I don't trust Facebook anymore. The ads just seem lower quality. They're like, it's really funny because like you say, Tori, Facebook and Instagram are the same people. And yet I can very visually see my privacy is not a thing on Facebook.
Interesting.
But it still feels like I have a little bit of it. I'm really terrible at saying this word, but anonymity. I know how to spell it. That's what matters. On Instagram, like I'll see things that I'm interested in, but not like, I don't see the ad for the Amazon product that I was just looking at or talking about in my kitchen, right? So like, I don't get that same experience in Instagram. So yeah, like I say, I do wonder how much of it is biased just to my own experiences and how it's different across different demographics and geolocations and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it just feels like privacy is completely gone. Plus, I don't know about y'all, but Facebook is a really good exercise for me to get frustrated because I'm going to see people who have very differing opinions sometimes and just be like, why do I know these stupid people? And I'm related to all of them. Just that kind of stuff. So I don't know if anybody else has that same experience. So like,
or that person you traveled and met like 10 years ago who you're like, I have no idea who you are. You know, you're having a child. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get that.
So that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just feel like the trust for Facebook has been deteriorating over time.
And that would affect the audience as a whole, potentially willingness to interact with an ad at all, trust whoever they're linking to, that kind of thing. I mean, I feel like some of the advertisers themselves have been shifty. I've noticed this on like Pinterest too, where, you know, maybe the ad standards should be a little higher and maybe you shouldn't be allowed to advertise here because you're definitely somewhere, I don't know, like I had an experience with like buying something from some, you know, one of those sites you haven't heard of, like in China, and then like, do they send you stuff? Do they not? Are they a real company or not? Like they're letting them set up and sell their stuff and they're not doing anything about it. And that, I mean, that's another reason trust is breaking down. Of course, the creepiness, and now the new story with what Home Depot and other people sharing receipts with Facebook so they can use your data. Lots of creepy corporate things happen. Yes.
And there are a lot of things too that I think it's that factor in, and there are trends that factor in, and trends get to be really heavy and really expensive. One thing right now that's like all the rage is drop shipping among really, really, really young people. So it's like a YouTube craze, and a lot of kids are teaching kids how to drop ship. And so a lot of the things people bought over Christmas were sold by children and sold to adults. And now we have friends in the credit card industry who are saying, well, yeah, chargebacks are at an all-time high because there are a lot of companies out there that aren't real companies, that are just a website that someone threw up in an afternoon and they're drop shipping off Alibaba or something like that. So that's that muddy landscape that we were talking about before, right? There are a lot of organizations that sell really sleek, really quick ads that you can get in less than 24 hours. And you can have a store up with products that you've never had in your hands. And that product may or may not come before Christmas, right? And your advertisers that are in that sort of tight window that are like, I have from August to December, it's go time, are competing against a kid who decided they wanted to, drop ship nail polish in November. And they've got their site up by like December 2nd. And then now it's go time against that. So I think that that's when your brand strategy really does well for you, because if your landing pages are excellent and they're explanatory and you can really come through on that proof, I think probably not this year, maybe not yet next year, but consumers will get the clues. There've got to be clues. I mean, we were duped in December. We definitely bought the nail polish from somebody who was using a post office in New York as their business address. And we should have known. So we won't make that mistake twice, right? And so perhaps next year, the landscape is going to be different. Google may respond and change up some of their policies. Credit card companies are definitely going to change their policies. So I think that it's going to take time, but the consumers are going to get savvy to it.
Interesting.
Lots of fraud. How exciting.
So to kind of completely change subjects here, I'm just going to pull something out of way over here. So Tori, you were talking about keywords earlier. So I'd love to know, so one of the tactics that I've gotten to use in past lives that was really fun. So I want to know if it's still being used now. Any kind of Twitter advertising that you guys are doing with paid promotion to get like a specific content piece in front of eyes at a specific time? And like examples I have of this was so this is unfortunately when I used to work at an agency that we did a lot of personal injury. Never again, but been there. But basically, as soon as somebody tweeted out that they had been in a car accident, we would send them a guide. And so we had a bot set up. So this was advertising. We had a bot that was messaging, and then we also had, the advertising would flip on. But we would just send them a piece of, here's everything you should do, and here's the information you need to get from the other driver, and all that kind of stuff. And it obviously worked really well at the time. Anything like that you guys are trying or curious about, or seen any success for your own campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done any Twitter ads, but I've definitely, in terms of that like search term, like we have like campaign structures in Google Ads where we'll go after like more exploratory keywords like that and then try to remarket to them. So when we layer that extra layer of data on that, if we have them on a remarketing list and then they search for photography or something a little bit more out there, like going back to this travel example, like, taking, bird photography or something like that. Like, oh, they like bird photography. They're looking for a certain type of bird, whatever, certain type of bird or certain something. We can bring them back to like, hey, here's this trip that is really focused around, this bird photography. So we've done it from a search term, but I've not done it from Twitter. That sounds really cool. I don't know if Toshi's done that.
Right now, we're paused on Twitter. In fact, we've pitched 2 or 3 Twitter campaigns since Elon Musk took over. And I think clients right now are not sure. First of all, they're not sure about the landscape because content moderation matters. And so there's not content moderation there. Yeah. They don't want to waste money, which I think is really important. A lot of clients have a ton of budget and they can spend, and then they want to, obviously they want to get the best results they can. And so we're looking at like tried and true, which is for us is LinkedIn and Instagram, and then exciting and new, which is TikTok. And so I think right now, since the big advertisers have pulled out of Twitter, the clients that we're looking at are just not sure that, number one, that their audience is there anymore because we don't have enough data to know that it's only been like a few months. So we're going to kind of hold out. So I think we're in a holding pattern on that. But with regards to keywords, a lot of times, like I said, when we do our brand strategy, we look at what the foundational keywords will be for a client. And we try to forecast, given all of their products, what we can do from a keyword standpoint. I mean, we're not SEO by any means, but keywords come into play at every single phase of the journey. And we're always revisiting, like you said, you can find things that are interrelated. And as long as you, we'll call them keyword seeds, as long as you have a keyword seed, we'll hand that over to an SEO company and say, hey, here's how these two things interlink, because we do a lot of relational work in those workshops, and leave it up to the SEO and PPC companies to just blow that out of the water as far as conversion attraction.
Yeah, I agree on that. Like TikTok as like one of the more exploratory and fun, exciting platforms. We've just seen like really great CPMs on there. So like you can't, it's like, I liken it to like Facebook was in 2012 when it was like, oh,
it was so good.
It was so good. And to your point on like Twitter, I haven't done any of these campaigns yet, but I want to explore more Reddit advertising. And that's another area that I'd love to. I just haven't had the right client for it because it is similar to Twitter, brand safety at that and whatnot. There's definitely a little bit more freedom in Reddit. So you need to have a brand that's okay with a little bit more tongue in cheek, playfulness,
and irreverence.
Yeah.
Part of your brand.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I think Reddit and Quora do a really good job for solidifying brand authority or thought leadership. Yeah. And if you can convince an organization to, even just to create content in that space, and to nurture that, they have to be ready to nurture it. They can't just put it out there and ignore it.
Out there. Yeah, exactly.
That's the tough thing is that I think a lot of clients are really wary of being a part of a community. And then there's a little bit of that imposter syndrome. Should we even be here talking about our thing in a space that's supposed to be authentic? But they can authentically do it. And it takes the right resources and the time and also that brand voice really plays and comes back in when we encourage clients to do that. We haven't done a ton of Reddit, but Quora is fun as heck. Clients love it. And if you can get them to take it, it's really, really fun.
Interesting. Yeah. Also, I will say when it comes to Reddit, there's been times working with brands that they hadn't even realized that they had a customer base that had created a subreddit dedicated to their brand.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole community talking about their products or, hey, what's going on with such and such. And they had no idea the conversation was going on.
Wow.
So I would say definitely make sure if you, especially if you're B2C or e-com, like check it out, because we have an e-com client that they have a subreddit that was created by their fans, and now they have, part of their customer service team is managing that Reddit community. But it's also a great source of information for figuring out like what product features are your best customers looking for. So there's just again, that's another whole conversation, but still really fun. And like you say, some of that data that you can really mine to influence some of your other decisions.
Yeah, actually, one thing I thought about in that sense is sometimes we've run campaigns for a client on TikTok, and people don't think about TikTok as much as a search engine, but it is often used as a validation factor by people searching for. Yes. So we had one client where we were having some great success with their TikTok ads. It was like great. And then just one day one of our staff just searched their brand on TikTok, and the second video is someone smashing their, not even smashing their product, but actually saying they hadn't done it before. And they're like, this is so expensive. Why would you spend this money kind of stuff? And it just wasn't the image you'd want as someone who Googled the brand. And if you Google their name in Google or whatever, there's this strong, they obviously have a curated, we want you to see all this content. And then TikTok, where they're searching a lot, I think nowadays it's this just raw content that someone didn't, and they're not even trying to smash. They're not trying to it's just they made a video about why they thought it was expensive, and you need to have that kind of brand presence, even if you're running just paid ads. So that was interesting for us to find too, similar to your subreddit story.
Yeah, it's just wild.
It is. It's also interesting. I feel like I'm getting a lot more questions about YouTube in the last year relative to the prior years. Just curious, what's happening there that suddenly people are more curious about exploring YouTube in ways they haven't been necessarily historically?
For us, I think clients were really worried about YouTube because it takes a certain production factor. And I think that the production level has come down quite a bit. And now there's a very clear model, especially set by, young, outrageous YouTubers. And it's funny because the aesthetic is carrying over into B2B. If you look at companies like Airtable or Miro, that they're putting out they'll put out their webinars, but if you look at their thumbnails, they look very similar to what a brand like a Mr. Beast or something looks like in their thumbnails. So there's an aesthetic there for sure. So there's a model that customers can really see, hey, this is working for other businesses, or even in a B2C context, there are plenty of viable models to follow. Is that something we could get into relatively cheaply and not have to spend all the production, of a full commercial sort of setup? And the answer is yes, absolutely.
I think there's a few different areas there to expand on. Like you said, the production cost coming down, I think that's been huge. We always had this stigma of how expensive it was going to be to create it. But nowadays you can get an editor at a pretty good price. You can raw video, you can get a microphone and create decent content for a much more affordable price. So I think combining that ease of creation with the fact that YouTube is a monetization channel, I've seen so many different brands say this is the year to invest in video. And it kind of lines up, there's all these different changes of AI within search and the search, data concerns and all these different cookieless world, but video isn't going anywhere. And if you can, I don't see YouTube, I can see how a lot of search volumes are going to be affected in the next, couple of years. But I don't see people as much like lessening their search volume on YouTube for fun, creative content, and their algorithm's just so good versus like a Netflix or for like, it's just, they know, like you go on YouTube and I'm sure you're within like 30 seconds to a minute, you're like, I want to watch this. Netflix, you might be like, kind of walking around going, where am I going to, like, what do I want to watch
That's true.
now? Right?
Yeah.
So they're like their algorithm strength, there's just all these different factors that I think, like I've anecdotally heard multiple people say, I'm going to invest in YouTube this year, and us as well have been doing as well.
I'm also seeing like bigger tech companies, or like, not necessarily like the Googles of the world, but like maybe the second tier. Like I'm seeing all the time. I cannot turn on YouTube for my morning yoga without seeing SEMrush or Webflow or, they're all these like Shopify. Everyone is constantly like, they know me.
Yeah,
they know where I'm at on the web, and they're constantly showing me all the tech company ads. It's fascinating.
Oh, yeah, I have to imagine that YouTube finds my user very confusing because my daughter watches Minecraft videos all the time. And then I watch my SEO videos that it's pretty funny. Like the ads that she gets are definitely for me. But then the videos that YouTube thinks I want to watch, I'm like, no, I do not. But yeah, I think, and to that point of like production, I think it's also become a lot more accepted of like you said, Ben, just have a camera and a good mic. And oh, hey, we all had to do that anyways when we started working from home.
That's
like even this, right?
Yeah.
Like our own podcast that Tori and I do, one of the reasons we do it is because it's easy. It's just a conversation with people that we like, and we hit record, and we have a phenomenal editor who makes us look much more polished than we actually are. And it's great. And it also comes together pretty quickly. Whereas I remember 10 years ago, I was working at an agency that had a video production department. Those were 3-6 month long projects. And they were so expensive because we had to get a studio. You had all the equipment, the script writing, like it was a lot. And especially once you started putting in, like, if you wanted any custom animation, those were expensive, right?
Yeah.
So the requirement for a B2B was just so much more because it needed kind of that, it needed to be something that could theoretically go on TV commercials, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was kind of that stigma, and we're out of that now.
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming, and I like it. I like that I feel like as corporate America is starting to focus more and more on authentic conversations and realizing that like that storytelling is really what your audiences are looking for, regardless of whether they're buying $10 nail polish or a $10 million ERP, right? Mm-hmm. We're all just looking for that story and something to connect to. But yeah, I think that part is just becoming a lot more rich, and it's just interesting to see how this continues to evolve.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you all so much for joining us and teaching us all about paid distribution. It's been lots of learnings, lots of social media conversations too, much more macro than I even expected, which I always love.
Thanks for having us on. This was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And we will catch y'all next time.
Yep. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining Opinionated SEO Opinions. Check us out and submit your questions at thegray.company/ask SEO questions. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.